Howdy, folks. I'm Brian. Here's Amber. And here's some Reddit. All right. Our first story is titled, Am I a Jerk for Asking My Sister to Leave After She Tried to Kick Me Out of My Own House? I have a 26-year-old sister who we'll call Emily, and she moved in with her husband, a 29-year-old male, who we'll call Roger, 2 years back. Emily and I were never very close, but we were family nonetheless. Recently, they decided to get their house renovated, and because it's been quite disastrous at their place, they asked if they could move in with me last week. I was a little shocked because we haven't spoken in a while, but I said it would be fine with me. Emily wanted to have a talk. She asked if her and Roger could have the place to themselves on Christmas Day and Christmas Eve. I asked where she thinks I can go. Her response, I don't know, get a motel. She continued to tell me how I can afford a couple of days in a motel and it won't kill me. She told me it's nothing against me, it's just that they have their own traditions and like to spend the holiday together. They chose to get their house renovated during this time, knowing it would interfere with their Christmas traditions. So I asked them to leave. I can't put my life on hold and move out because they want to spend a holiday with each other. They won't be homeless because my parents took them in, but they called me absolutely infuriated because I refused to let them stay and wouldn't let them enjoy the holiday after all the trouble they went through with the renovations. Am I the jerk? Thank you for the awards and support. I keep seeing "How could you be a jerk?" comment. I understand it, but my entire family did turn against me. That sort of thing messes with your head. Thank you nonetheless for all your help. This is a bizarre one.
It is.
So I want to get this straight real quick. And so they've been together moved in together for 2 years, and now they're doing renovations on their house. But instead of celebrating Christmas with this person, with OP, they decided that OP should take a hike and go to a hotel and celebrate Christmas not in her own home.
Yeah, that's just really weird. Like, being married does not entitle you to a place for Christmas more than... Because it seems like this is the sort of thing where they called on OP first because she's single and they thought maybe they could boot her out of the house. I imagine that when they went to the parents, they have to be like, now I have to share the holidays with our parents. Oh, yeah. No.
Well, I just don't understand the reasoning of that. Wouldn't you want to celebrate Christmas with the person who helped you out and took you in or something like that?
Or maybe save your renovations until not Christmas?
Yeah, or if Christmas is this important to you, then yeah, exactly. Don't do that over Christmas.
Because my guess is that the repair costs or renovation costs are cheaper over the Christmas holidays because people don't want to do repairs during Christmas.
Yeah.
But it's basically, you chose to save money over your Christmas traditions this year.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I don't think OP is the jerk in this case, especially since they basically wanted to kick her out of the house.
Yeah.
And like, I think that was a kind of a rude thing to even like float the idea to. It's like, oh, so you're willing to celebrate Christmas with you and your husband, but you don't want to involve me. And it's nothing personal, but I mean, at that point in time, it is personal.
Right, exactly. Like, if you wanted to celebrate just the two of you, then either one, you don't do the renovations and stay in your own home, or two, you celebrate Christmas in a hotel room.
Yeah, why does your sister have to be the one who gets kicked out of her house? Why don't they go to a hotel or a motel?
I mean, if you can afford home reservations, you probably can afford to go to a motel for a couple days.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. This one is just plain bizarre. I don't really understand what the sister and the brother-in-law were thinking. It just seems kind of rude.
Our next story is, am I the jerk for not wanting to give my mother-in-law my wedding dress? I got married to my soulmate 3 years ago, despite seeing a lot of red flags in his family, specifically my mother-in-law. She would constantly berate me with passive-aggressive comments about how I keep my house, my career choice, I am a chef, which is not her idea of a sustainable job, etc. My husband and his mother are very close with one another, and I normally bite my tongue so as not to put him in a situation where he has to choose between her and I. However, something happened this past month that spiraled me. My husband's father passed away when he was 7, and since then his mother has had a revolving door of different men, despite my husband urging her to settle. Finally, she met a very nice man and they got engaged. For timeline's purposes, my husband and I got married 2 months before my mother-in-law's boyfriend proposed. They were engaged for another 2 years before deciding on a wedding date. Shortly after the wedding date was set, my mother-in-law invited me to dinner, which was incredibly out of the ordinary, and asked me if I would be willing to lend her my wedding dress for her wedding. Needless to say, I was shocked. My wedding dress was made custom from a very nice designer, and it had been my dream dress for as long as I could remember. It is also important to note that it was paid for completely by my mother and I, and in fact, my mother-in-law did not pay anything for our wedding, except for $200 toward our honeymoon, which I thanked her profusely for. So, for her to ask if I would lend her my $4,500 dream dress that she had no part in buying, that I had custom made for myself, seemed ridiculous. I gave her a polite no and explained to her that the dress was very sentimental to me and I would feel uncomfortable having someone else wear it. I didn't even mention anything about money. She threw a complete fit in the middle of the restaurant, going on about how she wished her son had married someone more grateful and giving than myself. She commented on how the dress doesn't even fit me anymore because I've gained so much weight. I had 2 children since then, and how it would be stupid of me not to give it to her. I excused myself from the dinner and went home to tell my husband. To my surprise, it seemed like he was taking her side. He tried to reason with me that I would have no use for it anymore, so the nice thing to do would be to give it to her. I called my mom, who was furious. She called my mother-in-law and went off on her for even asking that, and explained to her how many extra shifts I had to pick up to even be able to afford that dress. My mother-in-law has since then disinvited both my mother and I from the wedding. I feel like I'm genuinely going crazy, so please let me know. Am I the jerk for not wanting to give my mother-in-law my wedding dress? No, you are not the jerk here.
Yeah, this is another weird one. So, I don't think there was any harm with the mother-in-law asking.
I mean, it depends on their relationship. If they're not very close and she just kind of calls OP over to dinner to ask, that does seem a little weird to me.
Yeah, well, I mean, sometimes you'll never hear from certain people until they want something from you.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what this sounds like, is she wanted something from OP, and then that's the moment she's like, oh, why don't I invite you over for dinner to, try getting your wedding dress? But I still don't know that there was any harm in asking. Where I think that she went really over the line was basically saying how much she wished her son had married someone different.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do agree that asking is the least problematic thing here. I still don't necessarily think it was in good taste.
Yeah.
But certainly, it sounds like this woman has been not very nice to OP from the outset. And the husband's never really stood up for OP. So OP's kind of just always has to acquiesce and keep her mouth shut until it finally reaches this level. And then her husband's not even on her side.
Yeah, well, I think the husband is it's weird that the husband isn't on her side in this. And, it's a $4,500 dress. And it also means that if the mother-in-law is going to wear it, she's probably going to have to get modifications to it too, just for it to fit right. And I don't know that that's fair to ask to be done for a wedding.
Yeah.
I mean, especially since a dress like this would be, something to pass on to a daughter or, and again, I think you're right. If they were really close, then it would be a little bit different of a situation too.
Yeah. And I just think I really do not like that the husband is not backing OP up here.
Yeah.
And it really makes me worry for how much, because she says that they're close, and I've heard so many of these stories on Reddit where there's a guy and his mother, and they are just so close that the wife kind of gets pushed to the wayside all the time. And if he can't see the harm in this, I kind of worry about their relationship in general. Yeah,
well, it's weird that he doesn't, isn't siding with his wife and being like, well, I mean, I guess you aren't using it. It's like,
I mean, I understand that, yes, okay, OP is not using this, but just because you're not using something doesn't mean you have to give it away.
Yeah, exactly.
If you have a scrapbook, you're not actively using and someone else wants your scrapbook, you don't hand that over to them. it does have a lot of sentimental and monetary value to OP,
Yeah.
so it seems really weird that he would just be so dismissive of her feelings.
Oh, yeah, I agree. All right. Our next letter is titled, Am I a jerk for pretending to not know my wife when she blew up at an old lady? I'm a 23-year-old male and my wife is a 24-year-old female. She is a lovely person and absolutely not the sort of person to blow up for no reason. However, hormones have taken her toll on her. As she enters her second trimester, things have gotten a little tense. Earlier, we were at the grocery store. I had our 2-year-old daughter while my wife was in the dairy aisle. We were a few feet away when I heard some old lady ask my wife how far along she was. My wife answered. I assumed all was well until I heard my wife go, "You don't touch somebody's stomach without asking them. How would you feel if I did that to you, huh? Are you dumb?" I turned to stare at them, only to find the whole store was staring at them as well. I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know how to defend my wife's words against an old lady with a walker. So I turned back around and continued to browse a cookie display. My wife didn't say anything, just walked away, and after a moment or two I followed her, only to find that she was mad, not at the lady, but me for just turning around and pretending not to know her. She accused me of not caring about her enough to defend her, and then took our daughter from me so she could give me the cold shoulder. I've been thinking about it for a while, and honestly, I'm torn. On one hand, I was embarrassed and didn't want to cause a scene, but she's my wife, and I should have been there for her. So, I think pregnant women especially face a lot of bodily autonomy issues, and this is probably, the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. Your wife doesn't want to be touched during a pandemic or, especially. And it seems a little odd that instead of hurrying over to your wife and kind of, getting between her and the old woman, that you just kind of froze. And I mean, we all have different panic and fear responses, and I certainly can understand that. But I don't necessarily think that this was the best way of handling the situation.
Yeah, I don't know if it was so much out of panic or fear that he turned away. It sounds like, and he seems to admit that he was just embarrassed, which, I mean, the thing is, people's bodies are not public property, even when they're pregnant. And just imagine if the old lady just went up to her randomly and touched her stomach and she wasn't pregnant. Would find that really weird.
Yeah.
So pregnant people really aren't, they're people. They have the same right to bodily autonomy that the rest of us have. And so when people touch them without their consent, it's not okay, and they need to be called out.
Yeah.
And sure, your wife would have been more polite, but it's her body. She's probably had a lot of, invasions of her space because people just don't seem to understand. Some people, not all people, of course, that when people are pregnant, it's not an open invitation to touch their bodies.
Yeah. When I hear about these stories, I read these every once in a while. I don't know if I've read one on Reddit, but when I sort through the stories, I read these every once in a while, and it's, it's never very good to, women who are pregnant never seem to appreciate it for some reason when people touch them. I just don't get it.
Well, and it's to me, it's just such a weird thing, even because, again, think of any other situation. A little old lady comes up and touches your stomach, and unless she's your grandma being you haven't been eating enough, you're probably going to be really weirded out.
Yeah, well, and also people have different personal spaces and personal space bubbles, and some people have different tolerances for wanting to be touched or not touched. And unless you know somebody and know how they're going to react, you shouldn't do this, not without their explicit consent.
That's an excellent point there. Yeah, every person is different, and so some people are going to be totally chill. You just go up and say, "Hey, can I touch your bump?" and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, sure." But other people are going to be like, "I'd rather if you didn't." And so it's a really good idea that if you want to touch someone's belly, just ask them first, and if they say no, then don't do it.
Yeah.
Our last story is, am I the jerk for wanting my daughter to be healthy? My daughter is a beautiful girl. She was diagnosed young with depression and OCD and was placed in therapy. Shortly after, when she was 15, she began caring more about her appearance. She lost a fair bit of weight and looked wonderful. She put effort into her looks and ate really well. Salads, no carbs, etc. Since starting university, however, she has been gaining weight steadily. She is not obese, but is clearly not healthy. I feel like I've lost my beautiful, healthy daughter. She said it's because she's eating again, and that when she was 16, she barely ate anything, and when she did, she deliberately threw it up. I don't believe her. We would have noticed. She said that she was obsessed with being thin and felt like she could not be perfect if she wasn't thin. She says that now she is happy and that her OCD is being treated with the right medication. She feels she can enjoy food again and is no longer so anxious about her looks. I knew these were all excuses for the fact that she was clearly not exercising or eating healthy. I also realized that aside from her diet, the only thing that has really changed since turning 18 is she is legally allowed to drink alcohol, which is incredibly fattening. More than once I have found her drinking alone in her room on a Friday night. I told her that drinking alone wasn't healthy. She said it was just one beer and it was a Friday. I told her it was still troubling. She said that if it bothered me, she wouldn't do it anymore. I was unconvinced and asked her point blank if she had an alcohol problem. She burst out laughing, but when she realized I was serious, she was livid. She said she couldn't believe I would even ask her that, and that, quote, even if I did, I wouldn't tell you. That was the final straw for me. I told her that she was destroying her body. Did she want to die? Why did she hate herself so much? She lost it, screaming at me that she didn't hate herself, but that she used to, and that she had worked hard to be happy. Why was I trying to tear her down? I told her she might think she's happy, but she's not. She's dangerously unhealthy, and that I can't bear to see what she's doing to herself. She told me I was obsessed with her weight and had always been. I told her I was her mother and I was always going to worry about her. Finally, she took her things and left. Literally packed up and bolted out the front door whilst I was distracted. She sent me a text to say that she would not be staying with us for Christmas anymore, that she felt suffocated in our house, and that she was tired of me constantly making her feel bad. I was furious, but she wouldn't answer my calls. I'm considering driving up there tomorrow and bringing her back. I called my friend to vent, but she said I'm the jerk for making my daughter feel bad about her weight. I said she doesn't understand because she doesn't have kids. She hung up on me. I love my daughter and I just wish she could be healthy. I'm so frightened for her.
Wow, that's quite the story.
It is.
Apparently bulimia doesn't exist.
Yeah, eating disorder is not a thing if you don't see them.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's like with something like bulimia, people who are bulimic are very careful about how they, purge and whatnot. And it's not something that you can always know or see or recognize. And just because you think your daughter doesn't have, an issue like this doesn't mean that she doesn't or didn't.
Yeah, exactly. Like the thing about eating disorders is that they can be invisible. Mm-hmm. And your daughter is telling you that she is happy now as she is. She was not happy when she was counting calories and throwing everything up. Eating salads and cutting out all carbs, those can work for some people, but those can also be a really bad sign of a disordered eating behavior. Mm-hmm. Your daughter is telling you point blank that she was not happy with who she was when she was 16, that she is gaining weight now because she likes food again. And you're saying, well, she can't be right. I know my daughter better than she knows herself. Mm-hmm. This is such an unhealthy attitude you have.
Yeah. And I certainly think that everyone should, have good dietary habits and exercise. But again, each person needs to figure out what that means for them and figure out how to approach food and fitness in a healthy and, moderated way, I think.
Yeah, well, the thing to recognize is that all bodies are different.
Yeah.
And so for a lot of people, being really thin is only attainable by basically eating salads all the time, which it sounds like what your daughter resorted to when she was 16.
Yeah.
And that's not healthy. Veggies are good for you, but they shouldn't be your entire diet.
Oh, yeah. Well, and also, not I wasn't saying that.
No, I know.
Yeah, but I was, as long as you're people who have weight on them, that's not unhealthy. And they've also done a lot of studies where people who have extra weight on them tend to have better, outcomes than people who are overly thin and whatnot. And I think that's important to keep in mind that, there isn't always that we shouldn't be so obsessed about being rail thin and whatnot, and that, you know, in our society, don't starve yourself just to be rail thin or something like that. That's not healthy.
Weight is not an indicator of health a lot of times.
Exactly.
And so and even if your daughter put on weight eating junk food or something, it's still going to be more healthy to be eating junk food than to be eating salads and throwing them out. What the mother here is doing is really damaging to the daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Like she's finally gotten to a point where she's happy with herself, where she's thriving, and her mom's trying to push her back into unhealthy habits just so she'll be thinner, and that's really sad. And so I just hope that OP can recognize that her daughter can be healthy at a larger size. It doesn't mean she's unhealthy. It just means her body naturally tends towards a larger size.
Yeah. Well, and I do understand, like, a mother's concern here, where she does want her daughter to be happy and healthy, but it seems like she's working directly against OP and or not OP. She's working directly against her daughter. Yeah,
she's become so linked health and weight so heavily that she can't see all the unhealthy behaviors.
Yeah.
Because she thinks that anytime you're thin, that means you're healthy, and that's not the case.
Exactly. And also the drinking one beer every Friday. That seems like a really petty thing to pick at.
Yeah.
I mean, drinking a beer on Friday is not going to make you an alcoholic.
Well, it doesn't even sound like she's worried about that. She's just worried about the calories, but stop watching your child's calorie consumption.
Well, she did ask her if she was an alcoholic.
Yeah, but I think this, based on the way she writes it, I think it's because she's like, that's where all her weight's coming from. She's an alcoholic.
Oh, yeah. Well. All right, folks. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks so much to Amber for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
If you like this video, consider giving me a thumbs up. If you dislike this video, consider giving me a thumbs down. Also, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all tomorrow.
Oh, did you want to show your other slide?
Oh, I'll just do that one. Wait, it's I'll be doing This is Thursday, so I should do it today.
Yeah.
All right. Also, this is one last call for voting for the $25 gift card, or giveaway rather, for one of these charities. So if you want to have a say in that, make sure to go vote on that on the video I released on Friday, December 18th, and we'll hopefully get that taken care of. So, yeah. I guess today is the last day to vote. So make sure to vote today. All right. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Oh, why don't you try stopping me, Amber?
Bash!
That would cause a mess.
It would. I would not do it. I'm a cat. I don't like water.
That would mean Brian's advice would be quickly and abruptly ended.
Just have like that, like flat screen, like this, whatever they call it, with the old VHS ones when it went, not VHS, but when the TV used to go offline.